All right, Rome asks, why do some people assert that there are two creation stories in Genesis? All right, that's a great question. And the reason is because when we look at Genesis chapter 1 compared to Genesis chapter 2, at first glance, it appears that the order of creation is different. All right, it appears that the order of creation is different. So let me share my screen with you so you guys can see what I am seeing. And all right, 1 second. I'm going to share my screen, and then hopefully it'll become clearer. All right, so here we are in the Bible. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 1. All right. Oh, how did I get to Ephesians? Who knows, right? All right, Genesis chapter 1. There we go. And we'll get rid of those. All right, let's go down to day 6. All right, so we're at day 4 here. We're getting to day 5. God creates the birds and the fish. And then we come to day 6. All right, so this is really the crux of the matter. All right, so God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing and beasts of the earth, each according to its kind, and it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind, and God saw that it was good. Then God said, all right, now the Hebrew just says, and God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. All right, so from there, let's jump over to Genesis chapter 2. And when we come down to verse 19, it says, and God says, it is not good that man should be alone. I'll make him a helper comparable to him. Out of the ground, the Lord God formed every beast of the field and bird of the air and brought them to Adam. So when we look at these two texts, you get the impression, reading from the English, that in Genesis chapter 1, God created the animals and then he created Adam and Eve. In Genesis chapter 2, you get the impression, again, reading from the English, that God created Adam and then creates the animals. Okay, so this is essentially why you have two, people often assume that there are two different accounts here. But the cool thing about the Hebrew is that it really dispels this faulty assumption, and the reason is when we take a look at the language, we understand a little bit about the grammar. Okay, so this is Vayitzer Yehovah Elohim min ha'adama chol chayat hasadeh ve'et kol of hashamayim. All right, so Vayitzer. So this word Vayitzer, it means and God formed. But here's the thing: in English, we are very, very into aspect. So what is aspect? Well, aspect is a way of describing an action, a verb that happened in the past, is happening now, or in the future, and we have aspect that we can add to tense. All right, so there are only 3 tenses in any language. If you can think of more, please let me know. But there's past, there's present, and there's future. All right, beyond that, you got me. Okay, so there's past, there's present, there's future. So let's take my glass of water. Of course, somebody calls me right now. All right, so let's take my glass of water. So the simple past tense, I drank water. Okay, that's the simple past tense. I drank water. Now, I was drinking water almost, but I was drinking water when the phone called. When the phone rang, excuse me, when the phone rang, I was drinking water. So was drinking is what we call a past progressive, and that is aspect. The tense or the time of the action hasn't changed. It's still in the past. But I'm now describing an aspect of that tense. I could also say I used to drink water. I have been drinking water. Okay, I could say it that way. Or I had drunk water. Um, let's see, I was drinking. There are more, okay? There's lots of different ways that I can describe the aspect in which I drank water, right? But they're all happening in the past tense. That is something that is peculiar to English, to many of the Romance languages, very big on aspect. Now, Hebrew doesn't really have aspect. All right, they just say something in the past. They might use words to help describe kind of when that happened or something, but there isn't any aspect. And so the challenge then is when we go from a language that has no aspect to a language that has lots of aspect. And because we are accustomed to hearing the aspect in our language, when we don't see it necessarily in the translation, then it can really be something that is hard to deal with. So let me share the screen one more time. I'm just going to show you that there are some modern translations that have actually dealt with this issue, and they have translated this in such a way that the aspect is reflected. And so we have the ESV, right, the English Standard Version, and you can see here in verse 19, it says, "Now out of the ground the Lord God had formed every beast of the field." All right, see that had formed. That right there makes all the difference. Makes all the difference. Now, had formed and formed are both possibilities from the Hebrew. All right, so Vayitzer could be translated, and the Lord God formed, or the Lord God had formed. Either is correct, right? We can do either of those, and they're both correct. Neither is better. Neither is more grammatically accurate than the other. They're both grammatically accurate. But because we understand that we're not doing violence to the text, and that using the past perfect had formed is actually a better solution in light of the context that we're talking about, it becomes a perfectly acceptable translation. So there's nothing wrong with saying that God formed every beast of the field, but now because we have chapter 1 in our brains, and we're thinking, well, wait a second, is there a Bible difficulty here? Do we have a contradiction? No, we don't. We really don't, because the Hebrew permits that we could translate had formed. And because we did that, so out of the ground the Lord God had formed every beast of the field. So the use of the past perfect means that the thing that's in the past perfect is the thing that happened before the simple past tense. For example, all right, I was I was at buying a coffee, and I had put in my order when my friend came in the restaurant. Okay, so they're both happening in the past, but had put in my order is the one that came first, and then my friend came in. That's what came second. And so that simplifies and clarifies and resolves this whole problem. And that is why people often suggest that there are two different accounts. And I would suggest it's because they are not looking at the grammar. They're just taking kind of the English gloss, and they're saying, well, clearly there's a problem here. So that's kind of the issue. So thank you for that question, Rome. That's a great one.